Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. 2020 taught us all about the complexities of the supply chains that shape our world. A shortage of one material or a rising demand for a type of transportation can quickly lead to rising consumer prices or empty store shelves. While there's not much individual companies can do to guard against a global catastrophe like the recent pandemic, my guests Jawad Khan and Tom Smith of Visionet say that there are many ways an organization can improve performance and resilience by embracing modern supply chain technology. Jawad and Tom share their experiences and observations working with clients in the last year, and we discuss how that work has informed the launch of their PartnerLinQ unified digital connectivity solution. PartnerLinQ is the sponsor of this episode, and we talk about the ways that supply chain visibility has expanded to more roles, how transporters fit into the picture, and how Dynamics 365 customers are adapting to current market conditions. Okay, I am joined here by Jawad Khan and Tom Smith from Visionet. Welcome to both of you.
Glad to be here, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
So I thought maybe we could start with just some introductions. Jawad, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role?
Sure, Jason. I'm responsible for professional services, business solutions innovation at Visionet, and with my primary focus is on supply chain, retail, and distribution industry across US and European clients in kind of various different segments that we serve.
All right, great. And Tom, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself as well?
Sure. Thanks, Jason. My name's Tom Smith. I'm the senior EDI implementation strategy consultant for Visionet Systems. I've been involved in EDI for since the mid-90s, so a very long time in areas as much as accessories, apparel, footwear, general merchandise, retail, grocery, food service, healthcare, the usual suspects, if you will, in the EDI space.
All right, excellent. Well, this is such a great time to be talking with both of you when I think about EDI and I think about supply chain. I mean, to me, it seems like discussions of supply chain sort of entered the popular culture in the last year in a way that I don't think it ever perhaps had in the past. And so I wanted to maybe start by just getting your feedback on, what has really changed in supply chain connectivity in the last year and what some of those demands have been.
Jason, I couldn't agree more. While we're not quite sure what's going to happen with retail and supply chain in the future, we certainly learned a lot in 2020. We learned how volatile the supply chain actually is. So even as suppliers and retailers go about their daily business, and everybody knows that in the background somewhere, there's a couple of pieces of your business you'd like to straighten out, fix, tweak, what have you. All those little areas that were in need of some support or maintenance or what have you, every company is different, really became something in the forefront throughout 2020 from March forward, even right up until today, because, when a supply chain is stressed like that, every little kink or break in that chain has a wide-ranging set of impacts for the entire business and frankly, right down to the consumer level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And what about in terms of like modernizing and sort of optimizing supply chains and the communications that go on between them? I mean, I've heard a lot of stories about, companies that have been forced to, that had to rush and had to very quickly sort of bring more digital capabilities into their organization, work a lot of late hours perhaps to overcome paper processes or just inefficient digital processes. Has that been a part of what your team has been seeing?
Absolutely, Jason. And I think this last particularly 12 to 14 months have been quite revealing. So what in our observation has been happening out there is that, there are kind of different stages of maturity that different companies are carrying, right? Larger, CPG companies with big IT budgets, with various different types of business models at a global scale. I mean, certainly were apparently better positioned because of their ability to invest. I mean, they had deployed very costly kind of solutions to kind of address the needs of various different business processes. Whereas as you kind of come lower and lower into the towards the mid-market and maybe lower end of the mid-market, you kind of certainly see a whole different world, right? Because even though from supply chain standpoint and challenges standpoint, I mean, the level of complexity and degree of need was about the same, but the capability gap was just very, very significant. And I think as Tom mentioned, I mean, as during last, 14, 18 months, I mean, companies kind of went through tremendous stress because, they were not only kind of struggling with the availability of the material meeting demands, but also stretching down to the point where they were many of them were trying to go direct to the consumer. And that kind of required a whole different set of technology and whole different types of capability, which they did not have in the past, right? So naturally, then suddenly the curiosity in all of these companies really peaked that, okay, well, you know what? Everybody's been talking about cloud. Everybody has been talking about API. Everybody has been talking about near real-time integration, visibility. Well, what does that really mean in the new technology context? When you look at the cloud, look at the big data, look at the streaming, look at advanced analytics at the speed of business. How those new latest cutting-edge technology trends can be used to the advantage of these companies, and how can that be achieved fast? And I think that's where a lot of our discussions around new solutions, new innovation has been happening very specifically in supply chain context during the last maybe 18 months.
Maybe, Tom, could I ask you to sort of just add on to some of those comments? Maybe, are there any other, specific requests or specific asks that you're getting when you have conversations with customers?
Yeah, I think adding to that conversation, to your point, a largely invisible supply chain for most consumers has become quite visible. We've seen a great deal of change, if you will. So, where heretofore we were unaware of supply chains, as a typical consumer. Now, everybody, no matter what business you're in, you could be a school teacher or a street sweeper or anything, in between, you are now suddenly aware of the supply chain, because when this COVID crisis happened, you went to your local retailer and they were suddenly out of toilet paper, then cleaning products and frozen food and fresh food. So I think that really has driven the conversation into business. So if you were in a business that was largely a manual process and you suddenly found yourself scrambling for transportation or refrigerated warehousing or, anything in between, or just a small retail grocer who was selling, toilet tissue and consumer packages, now all of a sudden you have no access to those products or limited access, and you're waiting very long to get products to your customers. You're now looking for other opportunities to stock your shelves. And I think that consumer impact that was broadly felt across the population really had an impact driving conversation into business. People are no longer looking at this as, this is not something I'm involved in. I'm not involved in the supply chain, to all of a sudden I have a high level of interest in the supply chain, and anything I can do for my company to help improve that supply chain, I'm ready, willing, and able to do. So I think that drove a great deal of conversation. It's no longer an IT prerogative. It's a business prerogative. It is the shipping department suddenly has an interest in supply chain connectivity. The marketing department has a sudden interest, sales all of a sudden, because now, even at the retail level, going direct to consumer, you've got a whole nother set of circumstances that you need, connectivity, interoperability, the ability to trade and exchange documents or products, and very quickly, this escalated last year.
I imagine that's in a way, for a team that's been very focused on EDI and trading partners, that's probably welcome news, because you've probably, from what I know of the space, people who are involved in it and see it for the value it has. I've been saying for years, the more people you can get conscious of it and involved, the better, for insight and for performance and probably other benefits too, right? So I imagine you see that I would see that as a good thing. Is that how your team kind of views some of these changes, at least in terms of awareness and paying attention to the importance of it?
It is. And at the same time, it's a double-edged sword, because that kind of draw in the supply chain. And let me give you an example. I'll give you a perfect consumer supply chain example. We all experienced this. We walked into the retailer, there was no toilet paper, frozen food aisles were empty. Well, that creates a giant draw on the transportation industry for refrigerated trucks, containments, right? These containments, there's a finite number of them. And if they're all moving frozen food to the retail grocer, what happens to the rest of the supply chain, right? So now suddenly fresh food suffers, and then vegetables and fruits and meats and dairy and cheeses and all those other products we're used to getting that come in these refrigerated vehicles. Suddenly there's a shortage of vehicle. The paper products, and we all had the toilet tissue experience last year. That has a sudden impact as well on the solid, the open container trucks, or even the flatbed trucks, because now you've got to move supply. You've got to move lumber and pulp and paper products and milled products to then further refine into paper products. So it reaches deep into the supply chain. And from a solution perspective, it's not just a solution perspective. So all of these companies involved in all the vertices of all these industries are now scrambling for support and technology and budget. So it's a stress on everyone, not only from the business and sales cycle. It's welcome news on the sales cycle, but then the downside is, the support and stress on the financial industry, the banking industry, getting funding for all these new developments that are necessary to, enhance and repair the supply chains that were damaged during 2020. Make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I'd like to maybe shift the focus here a little bit just to see how this relates back to like Dynamics 365 and some of the customers that you're having conversations with in terms of what their specific needs are when it comes to trading partners, to managing their own supply chains. I guess I could throw this open to either one of you who want to offer our first perspective on this one.
The Dynamics users that we encounter are, I would say the typical trading partner. They've seen the same thing we've all seen as consumers with the impacts on the supply chain. They've noticed, gaps maybe in their supply chain, and it really comes down to a need for speed and agility and visibility, right? So how do I get these transactions in and out of my system fast? How do I increase my visibility to them? How do I handle the errors coming in and out of those systems? All these little pieces of the puzzle seem to now collide, if you will, and enhanced capability becomes an issue. And that's kind of where, the PartnerLinQ product and Visionet stand out because of the way we've constructed the product and we've built it with visibility. We've built it with these chinks in the armor, if you will, that have existed in the supply chain for a very long time. The onboarding of trading partners, it's a messy business. It takes time. Historically, it's been a, one-to-one trading partner by trading partner, transaction by transaction relationship. And with PartnerLinQ, starting from the ground up without the need to sell a van subscription or deal with legacy product integration of our own, we were able to change the way companies could approach the EDI technologies. And we made it more of a one-to-many process and use tools that are built into the platform, like, business rules and common processing workflows to make it easier for our D365 customers to, integrate with a new trading partner or with an API or with XML or X12 or, EANCOM or Tradecoms on a global level. And I think that has gone a long way to really drive the conversation with the D365 customer, because they have or may have a solution, but it doesn't fit the way the business model has changed during 2020. I had my supply chains were all lined up. I had everything working just fine. And just fine, I'm throwing the air quotes around now, just fine just wasn't good enough for 2020, the way, things turned out. So they're looking to drastically improve, their strategies in those areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, well, a couple of things. One is that, when you talk about bringing trading partners on, I've heard that before, that can be a real sticking point. It can be a area where there's either resistance or it just takes too much time. Would you say that is actually improving? And I guess the other side of it, that before I forget, is just the idea that maybe you're in search of new trade, like maybe because of circumstances in the last, 12 to 14 months, that you're in search of more partners to fill gaps, to deal with maybe things that are still unexpected, and that you need a faster path to bring those on board.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about some distribution networks, they might have it all dialed in when it comes to their APIs and their websites, but then their third-party process is largely manual. So that creates a number of issues. So they didn't really find it necessary to integrate at that level before, but now it is necessary because of the changing demand model. right? So there's more of a pull from the consumer base. And, at heart, we're all consumers. So we're all thinking about this all the time and more so during the COVID.
I wanted to ask also about maybe on the transportation side and the role of transporters, because I know that's something that your team has done quite a bit of work on and you've written about as well. And maybe, Jawad, I can bring you in on this one. Some of the demands that transporters are dealing with in terms of data, in terms of process, maybe in terms of sort of just fitting in to the larger networks of supply chain parties out there?
Yes, absolutely. I think on transportation industry, I think it'll be hard to find anybody more knowledgeable than Tom himself. So I will probably request Tom to add a lot more color to it. Jason, if you don't mind, one very important thing I wanted to mention with reference to your last question, which was around Dynamics 365 and partner relationship management and partner communication. So we believed while we were kind of expanding onto this product to the next level was that, okay, if you look at Dynamics 365, the way it evolved over time, right? It started as a manufacturing and a finance system, then it kind of evolved into kind of a system which had much more deeper capability into retail as well as warehouse management and fulfillment, and then it kind of got deeper into the direct digital commerce type of capabilities as well. So essentially, we were dealing with a client base which could be manufacturers, which could be distributors, which could be the brick and mortar retailers, or it could be a truly digital native online retailers. And then the scenarios literally explode in terms of how that particular business is configured, right? A business may be fulfilling all the online orders themselves. They may be, using some other 3PLs to kind of, fulfilling some of the channels versus the other. And they could be, dealing different types of partners in their entire ecosystem to kind of run their supply chain efficiently. So for us, it was very important to kind of approach all of this diverse array of business requirements or possible scenarios in a very, very flexible way. So no matter which type of client it is, right? Whether they have their multi-channel online retailer, their distributor at the same time, whether they're manufacturers, whether they're also want to exercise a good amount of control on the last mile delivery to their end customers. So if we kind of, approach all of that very holistically, where all of those touch points, from consumer to business partners to vendors to suppliers, everything into a common backbone to deliver a common visibility. And I think that's something which our customers truly appreciate in many ways.
Well, thanks for that, Jawad. And yeah, it certainly is a broader range of concerns, a broader net, perhaps you might say, than what some people might think of up front. Getting back to maybe the transportation topic as we move on here, Tom, was there anything you wanted to add on that one?
Yeah, sure. If you think about most of the transportation network that we have, and in transportation, I'm talking about carriers. These carriers typically, they evolve as business units, right? So it may start out with a guy or a couple of brothers in a truck, and then they evolve into a regional, less than truckload enterprise, and eventually bring on truckload processes and systems as they grow, maybe expanding into intermodal and border control or import or export, different areas through either, growth or acquisition. And what they end up with are multiple systems, disparate systems, if you will, that perform specific functions or roles within what they do. And it's no different than any other business as a business matures. And I think products like PartnerLinQ really help span those networks. So, everybody ideally would like to consolidate their systems, put everything in one place, right? And that's what we've done with PartnerLinQ, right? So with the product that we've gone to market with, we set out to do three things: make it easy, keep it simple, and put everything in one place. And because of that, we've enabled the product to connect with multiple systems. So at the same time, and just transportation alone, if you're talking LTL and truckload, typically handled by different systems or systems acting in a different way, PartnerLinQ can bridge that gap. So, and even right with the D365 users, you're a GP user, you want to go to D365, PartnerLinQ helps bridge that gap between what you have or had and where you're intending to go without having to buy additional software. or additional products or additional licensing. It's already there. A prime example of that is what we've done in retail as a direct result of 2020, and that's Curbside Connect. So Curbside Connect has taken it to the next level. So not only and it's used with PartnerLinQ. So not only do we have the ability to connect to trading partners via EDI, X12, XML, and APIs, we can also use the Curbside Connect tool with our D365 customers in retail to connect with their consumers, their customers at the curbside. So, if you were forced to close your retail operation and you don't know what the future holds, or you have now scaled back your operations, you can deliver curbside with a product like PartnerLinQ and facilitate those transactions in and out of your enterprise. And that's a huge step forward, for retail. The impact was huge and large, and retailers were scrambling, and Visionet as a company stepped up and said, we know how to solve this problem. It's built into our DNA. We know how to do this. We've been doing this. We've built these components, and now we've taken these components and we've assembled them into a platform that helps you establish that kind of level of connectivity.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be one of the highest demand features. I know I've certainly heard quite a bit from Microsoft on that, and just, as a consumer out in the world, you hear so many sort of consumer-facing businesses advertising their ability to deliver that. I think maybe you especially heard it, 6 months ago as companies were ramping that up, and now I think it's almost become table stakes.
Yeah, and I think it's gone from a necessity to a marketing chip. Right. So my wife mentioned the other day that, she thought it was interesting that the folks that had gone curbside haven't pulled it back. It's now there. It's now a competitive point for them to say, you don't even have to get out of your car. And, for someone as busy as she is to be able to pull up to the curb and text somebody and have them bring out your packages and put them in your trunk. Well, that's just fantastic. There's no need to go into the store. How does that impact retail later on? We don't know. And we don't know today. And is it a localized thing, or is it a global phenomenon? We'll never know, or we may know at some point. But the point being that now with access and capabilities, with these breakages or missing links that occurred, we're now starting to see that turn the corner into opportunity. So if you haven't made a move, in the past 12, 14 months, you're turning the corner and you're starting to think about next year. Not only what next year brings, because there's always that fear factor based on last year, but you also have, new and increased opportunities. And I think, a platform like PartnerLinQ really brings that to light in the capabilities that we offer right out of the box. And I think that's a huge advantage, especially for our D365 customer base.
Yeah, one other thing I just wanted to make sure that we did touch on was, when you refer to PartnerLinQ, I mean, this is a product that recently did sort of its global launch. I mean, not too long ago, right? Can you just give a little bit more context there about the progression?
So Visionet as a company has been in the integration space for about 25 years. There's 6,300 plus people worldwide. So it's a very deep, broad, and detailed practice. And it has been largely built on services and support, and technology and bench strength. And that's fantastic. And that's a nice practice to have, right? But over the course of these 25 years, you tend to develop things like business processes, repeatable processes. You build tools for your team to use in order to facilitate the onboarding of trading partners. And I'll use the EDI example just for argument's sake, because it does expand from that point. But once you get to a certain point, the executives take notice and they say, you've got the tools, you've got components, you've got business processing, staffing, resourcing, marketing. What you have is a platform. And that's really, I think, where the executive leadership of Visionet has really stepped up and said, you guys have quite a bundling there. What you have is a platform, and gave us the go-ahead and an opportunity several years ago to start exploring that and to see if we can move the ball forward into a platform opportunity. And that's what we've been able to do. So we didn't really, and Jawad can talk more to this, we didn't really hit the floor with a big bang. It was more of a an iterative launch of a product and partnerships with Microsoft and others and integrations with different enterprises. So it's more of what I would call a soft launch into the market, to kind of get things moving with a platform that was different, truly different, really facilitating the customer's needs based on, what our experience has been over the past 25 or 30 years.
Absolutely, Tom. And I think the only thing I would add to that is that, I mean, one thing which we did from technology and perspective was to make sure that there is absolutely nothing legacy about the architecture, about the capabilities of the entire solution, right? And I think one of the very important things that we kept in our mind while we were kind of conceiving and thinking and building the product before launch was to make sure that it is totally aligned with the true spirit of the cloud computing. That means it is highly distributed. It can scale to any size business. If for example, our smaller customers, maybe Tom, would be as small as a few, maybe 1,000 transactions in a month, whereas the large ones with over 3 to 4 or maybe actually 30 million transactions a month, right?
30 million transactions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They all have access to exactly the same capabilities, and they pay as they go, right? And then again, we also kind of wanted to make sure that it is not just about the EDI, really, right? I mean, the EDI is one of the standards, and as the digitization of supply chain is evolving, a lot of things are changing, getting to the next level. More and more real-time capabilities are coming. There's a great opportunity to embed and integrate cognitive capabilities from compute standpoint into the whole B2B or even B2 digital space, and we've kind of created the opportunity for all of that to happen under the umbrella of a single unified solution framework. So we're very excited about that, and I think pretty much we're able to do things which I would say legacy solutions were not even capable of.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be the next expectation that everybody has, is really a new level of insight, a new level of predictive capabilities and analysis that brings something even newer that maybe hasn't been realized for most companies yet.
Yeah, and it's not even like it's futuring, right? So this is present. Just to give you some background, years ago, in transportation, it's a perfect example. So the drivers of these vehicles, they send messaging, right? When they pick up and deliver packages, just like you get, the consumer experience really comes into play here. You get that email, you're expecting an email to know that package was delivered at your doorstep. Well, those transactions have existed for decades. And because of the costs relative to the value-added networks, the big van providers over the years has been so high, the standards bodies actually moved and said, okay, well, the shipment status message is something you should probably send 6 times a day, limiting that visibility. Today, with these AS2 connections and API connections, we're able to move that data traffic much more quickly. So we've gone from, 5 or 6 times a day, or maybe updating at midnight after all the trucks have, returned to the terminal, to every 15 minutes. And in some cases, it's getting even faster because, when you take that intelligent computing and cloud aspect that, Visionet has embraced with PartnerLinQ and the other products, and the leadership of our executives like Jawad into, thinking how that future could look, it has really gone a long way in providing the kind of visibility and insight that consumers have come to expect. And, at the end of the day, all of our customers are consumers. We're all consumers. So, we want that same, and I'll use the word Amazon here. We want that Amazon feel. I want to order it online. I want to be pinged when it ships, and I want to know when it arrives, and I want to see it from my doorbell. So, all those things really fit into today's vision of the global supply chain, and Visionet is, truly visionary in that regard, especially when it comes to the products that we build.
All right. Well, it's been great having a chance to talk with you both. I mean, I feel like I said at the beginning, people definitely have a better understanding of some of the broad themes of what supply chain is all about today. And maybe that even filters down to when they see a disruption like, the recent Suez Canal issue or something else that comes up. But I think there's still so much to learn and understand, both for businesses and for users. Well, Jawad, Tom, thank you both so much for taking the time today.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you very much.
This has been another episode of the MSDW Podcast. My thanks to Jawad and Tom for joining. To learn more about PartnerLinQ, including white papers, case studies, blogs, and webinar recordings, or to schedule a demo, please go to partnerlinq.net. That's PartnerLinq.net. And that's it for this episode. You can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.